Mark Esper. Mark Esper has been fired from the Defense Department. Top news as we come into this most bizarre time in American history. We're all, I guess, reeling from what's been going on with the elections. The states have not yet declared the victor, but the news media has. How about that, America? We found a new area of government we knew nothing about. Put aside the Constitution. We're going to let the media decide. Apparently, the media has been deciding now for the last few years, maybe for the last 4 years since President Trump took office. We know how they feel about him. But before I go on any further, I want to talk to you a little bit about AMAC. It is an amazing advocacy group for conservative Americans who want someone to back them up and don't want to go to AARP. Our country is at a crossroads, folks, and there are people who are trying to tear us down. So many things that we hold dear are being ripped apart. Our history, our heritage, from the attacks on our founding fathers to attacks on the men and women in blue who defend our country. We're facing an assault on our most cherished freedoms. That's why I've partnered with my friends at AMAC who are standing up to defend those freedoms. Yes, AMAC, it provides valuable discounts and it provides benefits to those who join. But more importantly, they do so while boldly defending the Constitution, our individual liberties and basic moral compass. That's what I care about. That's what the Sara Carter Show is all about. And that's why AMAC fights for you, folks. They fight for future generations and they fight for the future of your country, my country. My friends, will you stand with AMAC or will you let them stand alone to fight against the liberal socialist storm that's trying to blow down our country? I stand with AMAC. I hope that you will too. I encourage you to join today at amac.us/Carter. Don't forget that /Carter. amac.us/Carter. That's amac.us/Carter. The benefits of membership are great, but the cause is even greater. Join AMAC US/Carter. So we've got a lot to talk about today, more importantly about election integrity. And I know our nation's been going through a lot. We have been reeling, basically, right, from what's happened in our country, not just with the election, but the last 4 years. We've seen so many of us have been divided. I can tell you this. I've lost some really close friends. I mean, not because I wanted to lose them, but because one of my closest friends, you know who you are, you're out there, I'm talking to you, turned into a never Trumper, joined the Lincoln Project, was a big part of it. And that was really tough on me. And I know for families out there, for a lot of you, you're probably going through the same thing. Like stop talking to an aunt or an uncle, a brother or a sister, fighting amongst each other, cousins, friends, neighbors. I mean, we really, really, really turned into a nation that I never believed could be possible, considering how close we all were after September 11th. Remember that. Remember, our nation stood together. It didn't matter if you were Republican or Democrat, if you didn't like your neighbor, if you loved your neighbor, whatever. If you were from the West Coast or the East Coast or the Midwest or the South, we were all one nation. We may be the United States of America, but we were all there to support each other. Now our nation is very divided. We're trying to find ways to reconnect with one another. But I got to tell you, people are very upset. Over 70 million people voted for President Trump. He received the most votes of any Republican candidate among minorities in this election, and the most votes of any Republican candidate ever. People went out and voted. And for that, I'm grateful. But we don't know what happened in Pennsylvania, in Arizona, across these states, in Michigan. And we've seen some instances where some serious mistakes or glitches, quote unquote, happened, like in Michigan. I want to go over this really quick with you because we went ahead and put together a nifty little sheet so I wouldn't mess up on any of these issues that we're dealing with right now, because a lot's happening in the country. Jenny Tare did this. I want to give her credit. You can read her stories at saracarter.com. She is wonderful, and she's really up to date on everything that's happening and on the phone all the time with folks, with sources in Washington, D.C. and across the country. You've got to read her work on my website. So right here, we have the Trump campaign lawsuit in Arizona. filed Saturday, alleging that Maricopa County incorrectly rejected votes cast by in-person voters on Election Day. Can you believe this? So this is a very serious issue. There were a lot of Trump supporters that said, you know what, I'm not voting early. I'm not going to vote early. I want to go to the polling station. I want to vote there in person. I want to make sure my vote counts. Maricopa is very Republican, folks. Maricopa County is very much on Trump's side. We all knew that. That was the reason why so many people were saying, hold off, don't call Arizona. Don't call Arizona. I'm a contributor for Fox News. Fox News called Arizona. There were a lot of issues with that. They called it early. But now they're saying, let's count these votes. Let's ensure that every legitimate vote counts. And now we're seeing there in Maricopa County that there was a possibility that a lot of votes were incorrectly rejected. And those were in-person voters on Election Day. We also have poll workers that are alleging that they told voters to override an error on voting machines. That's huge. We have that largely occurred in Maricopa County. Also, the campaign requests a manual inspection of purportedly overvoted ballots that were cast in person. Those are a lot. I have a lot of questions about that. I also have a lot of questions about what happened in Michigan. Listen to this. Remember those roughly 6,000 votes that the glitch so happened to go for Biden? Remember that before it was caught? That's really interesting. And that was with Dominion voting. And you could read my latest story on that on my website. But there are a lot of issues with Dominion voting. Texas did not take this. Now, this is a ballot counter, right? This is a system that was supposed to be foolproof, but actually had not been tested really before they decided to implement it in a lot of states. There was a rush to put these systems in, mainly because of COVID, mainly because there were concerns about, remember, Russian election interference. So they put in the system, and Texas said, you know what, I don't trust the system. You can't prove to me that this isn't tamper-proof and hack-proof, right? Big questions right there. The Atlanta Journal-Constitution wrote a big story about it in October. There were also other stories in February, actually, with the Associated Press. So let's look at this. They're demanding that GOP poll watchers be allowed to observe counting of ballots, and they were struck down on Thursday by a Michigan judge. How is it possible? This is where the Dems, this is where they operate so well. They can't get the legislature to do what they want, right? So they take it to the courts, and then they have the courts legislate. It's not up to the courts. This is up to the legislature. But this is how they do it. And this is the reason why they were so desperate to have Joe Biden, right, become president. Because what? Court packing? Isn't that a reason why Joe Biden didn't want to answer that question to the American people before the election? What do they want to do with the Supreme Court? They want to legislate from the courts. They want to legislate from the courts. This is extraordinarily dangerous. This is dangerous to our democracy. I'm telling you this right now. The Democrats are not the Democrats of old. These are not the Robert F. Kennedy Democrats. There is something very different, something that has changed over the last few years. Well, we've seen it for a long time, actually, with the rise of Bernie Sanders and others. And even in the 1960s and 70s, with the rise of even Hillary Clinton, although she's an opportunist, she's not really an idealist. Her and her husband like to line their pockets. We know that because, for crying out loud, Bill Clinton took $500,000 for a speech in Russia, right? From Renaissance Capital Bank that's basically run by FSB agents. So, I mean, those are the KGB guys, the new KGB. So you tell me, if Donald Trump would have pocketed $500,000 from the FSB at Renaissance Bank for one speech, would the New York Times and the Washington Post and all of these media basically that have sold their souls, they have sold their souls to the Democratic Party, and they hate Americans, the 70 plus million Americans that voted for President Trump, whether they're Black, white, Chinese, Hispanic, Bolivia, it doesn't matter where you're from. They hate you. They really do. They think you're a deplorable. They think you're uneducated. They think they have to reprogram you like the Chinese reprogram the Uyghurs. That's what they do. They want to reprogram America. That's why right now they're threatening, right? The Dems are threatening. Look at AOC. And then I'll get back to this list. I know I got diverted, but it's so important here. Look at what AOC has done, tweeting out that they're creating a list, right? a list of people like me. Actually, I was on the phone with a congressman last night. I said, you're going to be on that list. I'm going to be on the list. John Solomon's going to be on the list. Anybody who supported President Trump or investigated the Democrats are now going to be put on a list. What the heck is this list about? Did I wake up in like the Soviet Union? Am I in a gulag? Are they going to send me to the gulags? What are they going to do to me? Are they going to come after me? Are they going to target me? Are they going to sick the IRS on me when, if, and God, I hope not, but Biden becomes president? Is that what they're going to do? What are you planning on doing, AOC? Because guess what? I got a list with your name on it. I have a list with your name on it. Right? But it's a different kind of list because I'm not a communist like you. I'm not a socialist like you. I don't threaten people that way. My list is me and you talking it out on my podcast. Why don't you come join me? Explain to me how it's okay for the Democrats to create a list of the American people that they think offended them. Explain to me how you think it's okay, AOC, that, people be threatened publicly. It's not okay. It's not okay. Before I get back to you, AOC, I have an ad to do. I actually work for a living. Thank you very much. If you haven't tried Super Beets soft chews, you're actually missing out on a lot. Trust me, I love them. And just thinking about them just calmed me down right now. It's like eating a Starburst fruit roll-up or one of those Starburst fruit chews. It tastes so delicious. They're non-GMO beets with a powerful ingredient, grapeseed extract. The grapeseed extract used in Super Beets chews has been clinically shown to be 2 times as effective at supporting normal blood pressure as a healthy lifestyle alone. Think about that. You eat 2 Super Beets chews and it's like candy, and then you're like, it's better for you. I mean, how can this go wrong, right? And anyone in your family can eat it. Your kids, anybody. It's that good for you. Now you can take just 2 delicious chews a day, anytime, anywhere, to get your blood pressure support you need and to get the energy you want. Do what I did and support your heart health today with delicious Super Beet chews. Get your Super Beet chews today at getsuperbeets.com/Carter. And when you buy 2 bags, they'll throw in a third for free. That's getsuperbeets.com/Carter. Okay, let's get back to business, because I think I didn't quite finish what I was talking about there. I got distracted by AOC, and I'm actually very angry about that. I never in my life believed that, we would use the internet, which was supposed to be a place for open discussion and where we could talk about our ideas, where we could exchange ideas and learn from one another. Yes, debate, have discourse, reasonable discourse, and talk about issues that affect our lives. That now the internet is being used to basically like an intelligence operation, a weapon against the people of the world, for crying out. Not just America. Look at what Twitter's done. Look at how they've censored people's ability to speak to one another. This isn't about pushing people off that are criminals. This isn't about taking people out of the stream that are trying to conduct criminal behavior or inciting violence. This is about literally shutting our voices down. This is about literally controlling the narrative. And now we have, I'm going to call her AOC. I know she hates it, but why would you use it as a Twitter handle, at AOC? So I don't really care. So this Congresswoman AOC, she basically threatens that they're going to add names to this list, which I will not mention. I'm going to treat it like Voldemort, right? If you guys want, you can go online and see it for yourselves. But they're going to create this list and kind of target anybody who either supported Trump, participated with Trump, worked in the Trump administration. It's absolutely wrong. This is not what we should be doing. We're Americans. We don't target people. We have peaceful transitions of power. But I want to tell you something, and I want you to listen to me very clearly, because I know you're out there. It's hard. You're working every single day. You're just trying to make ends meet. You're in your kitchen like me, trying to cook for your families. You're wondering where your next paycheck's going to come from. Some of you are wondering if you're going to be able to hold on to your jobs. What does a Biden presidency mean? What's going to happen with our economy? What's going to happen with our world? There's a lot of concerns here. I have those exact same concerns. I feel the same way. But I got to tell you this, what these people want to do, and the reason we cannot give up this fight, no matter what happens, no matter what happens, right? I know we're mad. I know we're upset. For those of you who supported Trump, those of you who have been following the news, who know what the Biden family has done in China and Ukraine, and those of you who paid attention, I know you're upset because I am too. But this administration, Kamala Harris's administration, by the way, really funny that Siri and all these, these AIs were saying that Kamala Harris was the president all day yesterday. It was hilarious. But all of them, all they want to do is kind of destroy this. They're on the move to destroy our Constitution. I'm not joking here. This is their goal. They don't love the Constitution. They don't think that the Constitution should exist in this day and age. They have socialist values that they want to implement. It runs against what the Constitution stands for. This is the reason why they didn't care about jumping all over the Fourth Amendment, the right to privacy, the right to no search and seizure without reasonable evidence that something was going on. This is why they spied on President Trump. This is why they spied on Carter Page, George Papadopoulos, Mike Flynn. They did whatever they wanted under the Obama administration. And I'm not blaming just the Democrats here. There are a lot of Republican rhinos that are right on in it with them. They are just as bad, if not worse. This is why the Bushes, oh, congratulations, Biden. Oh, they're doing that because of the way they felt about Jeb Bush, the way they felt Trump treated Jeb Bush. Really? Really? They're liars. They hated Trump from the very beginning. The Bushes hated him. They really did. They really did, because Trump was the outsider. He was the disruptor. The American people were the disruptors who voted him into office. These people have their own little clique. They love each other. Look, Clinton hangs out with the Bush family. What did Bill Clinton say? He said that George Bush Sr. was the father he never had. Think about that, guys. How cute is that? How cute is that? And remember, so many Republicans didn't even show up at Trump's inauguration. Look what President Trump has been up against. Look at what this man has been up against for 4 years. For 4 years. All the investigations, everything that we revealed, all of the documents that have been revealed, the emails, the text messages, the hearings on Capitol Hill, the investigations by Congress, the investigations by the Inspector General. What happened with the FISA court, the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court, how they chided the Obama administration, everything that happened, every rule that was broken, every trampling of the Constitution, nothing was done. Nothing. What happened to Kevin Kleinsmith? Oh, you remember that guy? The guy that altered the FISA? He's going to get a slap on the hand. And where is this Durham report? Where are you, Attorney General William Barr? Where are you, John Durham? You know, it doesn't matter now. What matters is to have courage. And courage is something that is so rare. Courage is something that is so rare now. I realize that. I didn't realize that before. That's why, only like 1% serve the U.S. military, go off to war, are willing to sacrifice their lives for this nation, right? Because standing up against society and speaking the truth is a tough thing to do. It's better to just ignore it. It's better to just go straight, move on, not do anything, right? Just pretend like nothing ever happened. Don't tell people I voted for Trump. I'm going to pretend like I was always a Biden. Don't do it. Don't let them do that to you. This establishment, they take and they take and they take. You are their boss. Don't forget this. It's your tax dollars that actually pay for these bozos to be in Washington. They're the ones that are supposed to be working for you. They are the ones that work for you, not the other way around. And they need to show results. And guess what? Most of them can never show a result. They never show results. They play these games. I'm tired of these games. I'm tired of what's happening in Washington. I know you're tired of what's happening in Washington. My husband didn't give up his eyesight fighting for this country so that these clowns in Washington can play games with us. Our friends didn't give up their lives so that these clowns in Washington can play games with us and call us deplorables. Guess what? You're deplorable, Hillary Clinton. Guess what? Anybody, and I pray that we go through all the court systems with these election stats, right? And that all of the courts find out that there was no cheating, there was nothing wrong, it was a clean election. I pray that. I know that won't be the case. There's always some kind of cheating. There's always something that's going on. Well, before I get to Logan Churchwell, he's with the Public Interest Legal Foundation, an expert on what's been happening across the country, and somebody who has done extensive work on voter fraud in the various states, particularly in Pennsylvania. There was some incredible work done there by the Public Interest Legal Foundation. He's going to have a lot of answers for us, okay? A lot of answers as to what was going on. I want to talk to you about something that means a lot to me. And this is some really good news right now in a time where everything's kind of upside down. But it's, believe it or not, it's news from Arm & Hammer. It includes cats, and Arm & Hammer Cat Litter has launched this new Perfectly Imperfect campaign to help lovable but overlooked shelter cats find caring forever homes. Everyone knows that benefits of adopting a cat. I sure do. I have an amazing cat named Barry who I rescued from a shelter, and he's been a great cat for me and my family. And these cats in particular need our love, attention, and support. From now until November 30th, shelters and cat lovers can nominate a perfectly imperfect feline friend on felinegenerousstories.com. It's a fun way to help cats find caring pet parents through shelters. 3 shelters will win $10,000 each. Plus, Arm & Hammer is awarding $100 worth of litter to the first 100 eligible entrants. You got to get that litter, folks. Visit felinegenerousstories.com for official rules and to learn more. That's felinegenerousstories.com for official rules and to learn more. Well, I'm very happy today to bring on Logan Churchwell. He is works with the Public Interest Legal Foundation, and you have been doing an amazing amount of work this year in advance of this election, and I'm looking forward to hearing everything that you found. I was also viewing on Twitter a lot of the videos, and I posted some of them myself. I can't tell you how many people have been watching your videos from the center on my Twitter page, which basically exposed all kinds of issues and all kinds of problems in Pennsylvania, as well as Nevada with what could be potential voter fraud. So thank you for being on the show today.
Well, thank you very much for having me on. It has been a whirlwind of a year. Election years are usually like that, but one added benefit of 2020 is over and over again we've been telling that we have problems coming this election. And unfortunately, we get to say, I told you so too many times.
Yeah, let's talk about that. There was Jay Christian Anderson was in Pennsylvania. He was in Nevada too, questioning people, following the voter rolls and going to the addresses listed on there. And when he'd get there, a lot of times he'd find businesses or empty lots or people that no longer live there. Explain to the listeners how dangerous this is and what this means as far as universal mail ballots.
Sure. So just about every state, there are very rare exceptions, and they're usually very rural exceptions. But just about every state will say that when you register to vote and you give us an address, you better live at that address. That has to be a residential purpose to that location that you're giving us, because that lets us know where you live in the county. That lets us know what ballot to give you in terms of school board race and all the way up. And large counties can have thousands of variations of ballots that they have to prepare just because of all the district lines. And the way that you can cloudy all of that up is by not listing the address where you actually live. And in fact, you give the address from where you work or your business or what have you. And so one thing the Public Interest Legal Foundation did over the past year leading up to the 2020 election was take the nation's voter rolls, everywhere that we can get them, vast majority of states, and compare them against lists of commercial and otherwise non-residential addresses. And what we did after we found about 30,000 examples nationwide of very obvious cases where that was not a house, it was not an apartment, it was not a group shelter or a church that has beds or anything like that, but it's a gas station, it's a shady casino parlor, it's something that no one.
A shady casino parlor. That's I'm like, where are those people living at? In the shady casino parlor, massage parlors, God only knows where you're finding them, right?
Right. So in Nevada, for example, we found standalone keno halls Places where a gas station essentially bought some machines in a shack behind the gas station, and they had a little casino themselves. Things like that. But also in places like Pittsburgh, people registered to vote at the Alcoa headquarters. So across
Wait,
the country.
so Alcoa headquarters, people were registered to Alcoa headquarters in
That's
Pittsburgh.
absolutely true. And whenever you watch the video, what we cut together for the Pennsylvania addresses, what was funny is the guys with the camera, we told them where the addresses were, but we didn't tell them what they were going to see. And that made for part of the fun in making the video. And so whenever an address pulls up the Alcoa headquarters in Pittsburgh, it makes for some fun tape to put together. But all kidding aside, we're still talking about critical issues here. And whenever you have states that are
Logan, how
pushing,
does this happen? How does this happen in America? How does this happen in 2020 in the United States of America when we're constantly badgering other nations on their elections? How does this happen?
it's because our election system, by and large, still runs on faith and trust in one another. And although that is a wonderful ideal, whenever you register to vote and you say you're a U.S. citizen, no one's fact checking you. When you give an address to a downtown corporate headquarters building and you say that's your house, no one's fact checking you. Or at least if they are trying to, they're not doing a good job of it. Some states are better than others at filtering out bad addresses. But we were showing in places like Nevada and Pennsylvania that regardless of those filters, very obvious, conspicuous violations of that rule were occurring. Of it, you know, camera crew around people and see I live here.
Oh, I think we lost you on that last question. I want to give you an opportunity to go back to that because I want to hear it all. So if you could just explain that one more time, that would be great.
Sorry. Sure. So what we found here is that some states are doing a better job than others at filtering out addresses that should not be used for homes. And essentially what you have is a spreadsheet of addresses and voter registration records that should not exist together. And in order to illuminate the broader public that this is an issue, that's why we've put these videos together, because it's one thing for a Public Interest Legal Foundation to engage in this research and use it to fuel lawsuits and see reforms. But the other problem that we have is trying to educate the broader public on how the system is working for them and how it isn't. And so a perfect example of how broader civic education on how our election system works or does not work came up this past weekend in Detroit. You might have seen this a meme essentially floating around of some guy who was born in the 1890s but cast a ballot in 2020. We sued Detroit for this very specific reason in the past year, because in essence, the dates of birth and the dates of registration in the Detroit voter roll, and ditto in parts of the Pennsylvania one as well, you just cannot trust them. So we found a guy who said he registered to vote he was born in 1823. That's what the date of birth said.
I don't want to laugh, but I'm like, hey, did someone actually vote in his name?
No, he was born in 1923. So you had screw ups occurring inside the four walls of the elections office. You don't have anyone taking a look and rechecking their own work, and you're registering people to vote with odds are the error is not occurring on by the person trying to register. Their information is just getting screwed up and transferred.
Right.
And so someone that says they were born in 1890 and voted in 2020, the reality is they were probably born in 1990. And the local election official made a mistake. No one ever caught it. No one ever rechecked the work or done any due diligence. And then good concerned citizens come along concerned about how the election went. They look at the local voter roll and trust, well, it must be accurate. It says 1890. This guy must be dead and someone stole his vote anyway. But the truth is that the voter rolls were in such a mess that you just couldn't trust what you were seeing. And so every which way we can, we're trying to illuminate the public and show them how it's not just a funny thing to see someone that says they're born in 1823.
Right.
It's not
Or
just a typo.
what about the dead? What about the dead? A lot of people have been talking about people that are dead on the voter rolls. They've not been removed from the voter rolls. Concern about ballot harvesting. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes.
Have you seen any of that?
Well, It's a two-part question. Now, let me answer the first part. Dead people on voter rolls. Absolutely. In the past week, we refiled a lawsuit against the state of Pennsylvania where we claim and provide evidence to the court under seal that there are just north of 21,000 dead people registered to vote in Pennsylvania. 21,000.
That's
And
incredible.
what we also learned in this process is that more than 90% of these 21,000 died over a year ago, and they've just been hanging on. We have folks that died when Bill Clinton was president, and they're still listed on the registry. So we're trying to figure out, why is it that when Pennsylvania misses an obituary or a death record, why is it that they don't look back in time and check their work? Because if they miss your obituary this week, then you get to stay on the voter roll next week and beyond. And that's something we want to address, at the very least in Pennsylvania, because it is a problem that we keep seeing over and over again. And beyond that, we've got several hundred examples from the 2016 and the 2018 elections
Mhm.
where these deceased people on the voter rolls were credited for voting well after they died.
And who did they vote for? What
We don't
party?
know. That's something we cannot know uh, in terms of what what was said on their ballot. All we know is that they cast a ballot and it was accepted,
So
uh,
ghosts are literally voting in Pennsylvania. We've got ghost voters
or at least dead spouses.
or dead
That's,
spouses.
yeah, it's more likely the case.
Yeah, yeah, you're right. You're right. People voting for their spouse or for a family member that passed away and just putting and submitting the vote. Ballot harvesting. That is a big issue. People have talked about it quite a lot.
Mhm.
Is that a real concern? I mean, there's a lot of GOP members that are very concerned. A lot of people, and I think everybody should be concerned. I think if you're a Democrat or a Republican, you have to be concerned about voter integrity, right? Unless you're
Sure.
taking advantage of the system and you don't want anyone to know about it.
Well, yes. So there's two interesting things about ballot harvesting. Number one, it is happening, uh, but the problem is that you can't really catch it in real time. When you look at, say, the state Texas Attorney General's office, they've been busting up a lot of ballot harvesting rings, and one common thread between all of them is that the coming forth of the prosecution and the actual election that was affected, you can see years difference in time, because you usually cannot bust up a ballot harvesting ring until you make someone talk. It's not
Right.
something you can see in a spreadsheet. It's not something that you see as the returns are coming in. Usually someone inside the ring gets mad, usually because they did not get paid, and then they go to the police to get retribution and trade for immunity somehow. That's how Texas has been busting up a lot of these harvesting rings, and it takes time. The other thing that we've learned about harvesting, and you watch in the new year, regardless of how this election shakes out,
Mhm.
there's going to be a debate among conservatives and Republican establishment types on, should we reconsider our position on ballot harvesting? If the other guys are going to do it, why don't we try and do it better? And the problem with that line of thinking is that ballot harvesting is most effective when there's a power imbalance between the harvester and the harvestee. Usually, that harvester has something of value to get that harvested person to cheat. It's
Right.
usually financial, is some kind of gift, it could be food for groceries, but we've also seen examples where harvesters have promised things like help with becoming a U.S. citizen.
Mhm.
So unwrap that for a minute. Here's someone that is a non-U.S. citizen registered to vote, and the ballot harvester told them that if you vote the way I want you to, I will help you get to that naturalization ceremony. But over
I
and
mean,
over
that's
again.
really frightening. That's really frightening. And I have heard of this actually in California. I remember speaking to someone, and I haven't been able to prove this myself, right? But I was told that there were people, even in California, that were paying people to vote a certain way, that they had cash on them, and that they were sent out there to give cash to people to say to vote in this direction, or and like you said, making promises that aren't even realistic, that aren't even true. And these are on local levels, right? So it's not just
Mhm.
about it's not just the presidential election. A lot of times it's right at the local level where they want to skew or move the local government in a certain direction. And that's where it becomes extraordinarily dangerous because most of us who don't live in that area aren't paying attention to it, right?
Right. And here's where you can spot the most egregious and likely places to find a harvesting operation. These occur in largely poorer communities. You see a lot of this in deep South Texas, but also in some of the outside cities in Dallas. And you might wonder, why do I keep talking about Texas? It's because Texas is essentially writing the book on how to
Right.
catch a harvesting ring. But one thing we've
That's
learned over,
awesome. Talk about that. Texas is writing the book on catching harvesting rings. I never,
yeah,
you know what? I don't hear this story enough because
right.
you're absolutely right. Talk a little bit, just fill me in on that a little bit because I think every one of you out there is probably going, "What? Really? What are they doing that's different than the rest of the states? And how can the other states adopt it?"
Right. So a couple of things. Texas has uh, adopted the mindset that if you want to bust up a ring, you're not going to do it looking at election returns or even just looking around the inside of an elections office. You have to engage in human intelligence. And they understand that you have to essentially break that ring up from a human perspective. You got to get someone to talk. And that someone who talks is usually someone that did not get paid adequately to keep cheating. And where you look
So awesome.
geographically for these issues, you find neighborhoods that are incredibly poor. So you see lots of this action happening down the Rio Grande Valley in South Texas. These are some of the poorest counties in the United States.
Mhm.
But you can also look at areas where you have very densely populated elderly voters, uh, and that's how rings have been busted up in North Texas. Because instead of focusing on people that just need grocery money, they focused on areas where you had high density amounts of folks that were living, they're over the age of 80 years old, multi-generational homes, grandkid is taking care of grandma, that sort of thing. And grandkid is out at work. So knock on the door when they're gone. And so you can speak directly to grandma. Some of
Wow.
the one of the most infamous rings that was busted in the past couple of years in Fort Worth, Texas, they were focusing on elderly voters that were blind. That was the key thing, and essentially said, "I am here with Tarrant County. I understand you have an absentee ballot that's kind of out here in the wind. We're here to help bring it home and make sure that it's voted properly." And they got caught because some of the blind folks that became suspicious when they started going through their other mail. And that's how they were able to call the police and say, I understand that the county might be trying to help people get out the vote, just as, being good citizens. But why were they trying to access my credit card bill? Why were they trying to get my husband's mail? What was going
Right.
on? And that's how they got caught. They got lazy, or they just got too overzealous in some cases, and they get caught.
Let
But
me ask you this. Is it usually a one part? Is it a party? Is it a political party? Is it a crime ring? Is it a combination of both? Are we looking at are there Republicans out there going, we got to get these blind elderly people to vote for us? Or is it the Democrats? What do you see more of? When you're looking at these cases.
when you're dealing with the harvesters themselves, you're dealing with mercenaries. They're going to go to whoever pays the most.
Okay.
But when you go to motive about why should I hire a harvester to get elected, it's not actually a partisan motive most of the time. It's an economic one, because harvesting occurs the most and is most effective in local, hyper local races. We're talking about school board district one or something similar, county commissioner's court, city council district, because that when you're that far down the ballot, odds are you have fewer people even paying attention to that ballot and just leave it
Right.
blank. Just like you've seen, there's hundreds of thousands of ballots going around that only went for Joe Biden and nothing else. That's
Right.
not suspicious. That's called an undervote. So whenever you're dealing with a race that's so far physically down on the ballot and you're going to have a lot of undervotes, that means the margin between winner and loser is going to be very tight too. And if you can harvest and control 50 votes in a school board race, in multiple school board races at once, you can take control of the school board, and the financial supporter who's backing that slate of candidates to get on the school board knows that once they get into office, they're going to turn around and steer a contract back to that business interest. So one of the things that you keep seeing in the Rio Grande Valley, at least, is that whoever wins that county commissioner's race, that school board race, is going to have quite a purse to control that runs essentially the local economy. And so it becomes very important that the person that won their school board race by 30 votes, they get to determine who the outside janitorial contract goes to, or the landscaping contract, or the roofing contract, something. But
See,
over and over,
this makes so much sense to me now that you're explaining this because you're absolutely right. When I used to cover local news, when I was a young reporter covering local news, it would always be about follow the money, right? Whether it was in schools, in a school district with a contractor that was bringing in IT equipment, or whether it was, a superintendent connecting with somebody else, it was always about the money and who was getting the contracts on the local level. It never, I mean, it didn't really occur to me until it was like a light bulb moment. Like, yes, that's why they would do it. Now, what about the concerns about gerrymandering?
So there's a couple of issues. Number one, in the past couple of years, there's been these fights, these court fights over partisan gerrymandering. Essentially, the left have been accusing the right in states like Wisconsin, most recently, saying you drew a map that is essentially impossible for Democrats to win. That is partisan gerrymandering. It went all the way up to the Supreme Court, multiple bites at the apple, and every time the Supreme Court has said, "Look, this is a political fight. It's not a legal fight." There are some spoils for the victor, in essence. There's no question about people being discriminated against in terms of race or anything like that. If you don't like it, just put better candidates forward and win the election next time around. So the partisan gerrymandering issue, as much noise as it can generate on the internet and elsewhere, it doesn't really fly in the courts. In the past Supreme Court term, it's failed twice. But it is 2020, and next year we are going to get into regular redistricting.
Mhm.
And one thing that I'm curious to see what happens next is in previous years, the Supreme Court has said that you don't have to draw lines based on total population. You could pick a different standard and say, we're going to draw House district lines based on total number of registered voters, or more likely, total number of US citizens resident in that given area instead of all people. So we will be seeing a good chance of states, and my money's on Texas in terms of largest, most politically important state, to where they mix up the recipe and say, we're going to draw congressional maps on down to reflect US citizens, not just everybody resident. And what that can do is it can go a lot of different trajectories. But in essence, if you have a place like Houston, Texas, which has hundreds of thousands of immigrants living there, legally or
Mhm.
illegally, they're still
Right.
being counted under the current standard. And so you have all of these congressional maps drawn inside the city center of Houston, even though geographically it's very small compared to other Texas congressional districts. But if you were to focus instead on US citizens, your congressional districts geographically are going to increase in size because you need to have more US citizens to account for to establish that district. So we might be getting a little bit ahead of ourselves, but one of the exciting things to be watching for in terms of redistricting next year is if we start drawing maps based on US citizenship as opposed to total
Total.
residence.
That's going to be incredible. I'm really interested in that. And I'll be sure to follow up with you on that as it goes on and as we proceed into the future. Now, as far as the future is concerned, we're still on edge as Americans. We still, even though the media, mainstream media, and I want to, I won't ask you, or maybe I will ask you. You can say whatever you like, how you feel about this, about the mainstream media calling the election. Regardless of what happens, what do you think is the most important thing as Americans we need to do now to save the sanctity of this election in order to ensure that every American is okay, no matter who wins this election, with moving forward in January? I mean, I think as an American, I just want to know who won legitimately. We accept that and we move on with a peaceful transition of power, right?
Sure. One thing I like to think about sometimes, regardless of who wins a presidential election, what is the great moral of each election that we take out of it? What is that great lesson that's been taught to us? And in 2016, one of the big lessons and wake up calls for the broader electorate is that other countries care about how our elections are run, and they
Right.
might try and stick their finger in the pie and see what they can do with it. Russia certainly did that. And we've been very conscious then about other state actors like Iran and China and others affecting 2020. But I think the big lesson that's going to come out of 2020 is that we really do not, as a country, pay enough attention to our local election offices, because even the slightest hiccup in a count or a report of a ballot count coming through in a county that just about anyone can't put on the map anyway makes national news. If Antrim, Michigan transposes some digits, it lights Twitter on fire. And the reason that we seem to be jumping from one catastrophe to the next when it comes to the counting of the ballots in our election is because we don't fundamentally understand as a country how that process actually works. And whenever you see, for example, the guy who says he was born in 1890, but he voted this year, uh, problems like that happen because we aren't holding our election officials' feet to the fire enough. This is a customer service experience that we're dealing with here, and
Right.
we haven't been requiring good service for a very long time, and now it's built up to this point.
Is it time
So
for election reform? I mean, do we need to get a committee together maybe in Washington, D.C. or something? I mean, I'm tired of committees, but do we need
right.
somebody to oversee what the rules need to be, what our federal elections, how they need to be run? Maybe your group, along with other groups, saying, okay, this is what it's going to take to ensure a clean and fair election with integrity. Do we need that?
I actually don't think so. I think we
Okay.
have it's kind of like the U.S. Constitution. Yeah, what may not have been perfect in its first draft and its first version, but it built itself out to where it could be improved over time with amendments. And our election system, by and large, has a lot of good things going for it. We just don't have enough people educated on how it works, and that's okay. I mean, good luck trying to find a civics class in a public high school anywhere near you. So we're dealing with a bit of a learning curve here. But the best thing that we can do as a nation is, first of all, understand where the line is drawn in responsibility between the federal government and our state and local governments, because our state and local governments have a lot more to do with how your election experience goes than the federal government. Uh, and once we've got that down, then it's focusing on the minutia of the system itself. So, Public Interest Legal Foundation, by and large, focuses on how well voter registration records are being maintained. That sounds like paint drying, but the reason you're seeing so much drama right now all over the country when it comes to election returns and mail ballots and everything about that, you can root that drama back to the fact that the voter roll itself was not ready for 2020. So in Las
Right.
Vegas, Nevada, when you send a ballot to everyone in Las Vegas and 250,000 of ballots bounce off of the wrong address, you should have seen that coming if if you knew that you were not maintaining the voter rolls the way they should be. And so there are a lot of rude awakenings coming to us in this election, regardless of who wins it. But the message should be, at least in our opinion, that Americans need to be paying more attention and holding to greater account their election officials. This is not a group that you should just worry about every 4 years. You need to worry about them all the time because they're the ones that are in control of the franchise and making sure
I
that it runs properly.
I couldn't agree with you more, Logan. Thank you so much for I hope you come back to the Sarah Carter show. I mean, this is what you're telling me is I think so important. It's a time that Americans we really need to be educated on this. Every one of us at home needs to understand how the process works. And you're right, so many of us didn't have a good civics class or haven't been informed about elections, or some of us are new citizens out there and we really don't know how it operates, but we need to clean up those voter rolls and we need it for our election integrity so we don't have this nation so divided, so that we can, I guess, know that when we put our vote in, that our vote matters. And that's what's important. And I think that's why every legitimate vote counts. And I don't see any problem with just ensuring that it goes through the court system and that we know in January who the real president is, who is declared the president of these United States. We just need to clean up those voter rolls. And you're right, we shouldn't be doing it every, election cycle. It needs to be done consistently throughout the year. Maybe that's the responsibility of the media. It's the responsibility of all of us to kind of hold them accountable and go to these election boards and say, "Can I see your voter rolls? Can we make sure that this is cleaned up?" But it's a tough job. I know you guys have been doing it, and so is Judicial Watch and some others, but there's not a lot of people out there really doing it. So media, if there's anybody out there who is still has integrity and doesn't care, just please do your job and conduct an investigation in your local, election boards and in your states and get these voter rolls cleaned up and hold people accountable who aren't doing it. So thank you for being with us today, Logan. I really
Thank
appreciate
you.
it. Thank you. I don't know about you, but I felt like I learned a lot today from Logan Churchwell. The guy is brilliant. I'm bringing him back on because we really do need to think about election integrity and what this means for our country. And we really have to be, well, actually, we really have to be really afraid. I want you to hear This is Chuck Schumer, and I tell you, I'm going to pull this up right now. Greg, I want you to play it, but it's Schumer about now we take Georgia, then we take America. I'm going to explain that a little bit, and I'll talk about it more on the next podcast. But I want you to hear this. Be very afraid.
Now we take Georgia. Now we take Georgia, and then we change America.
And then we change America. And then we change America. Remember at the top of the podcast, I talked to you about the Constitution. These people hate the Constitution. I absolutely believe that. They want a different America. They want to change America. I don't want you, Chuck Schumer, to change America. AOC, I don't need you to change America. I love this country. My father fought for this country in World War II. My grandfather fought for this country in the Rainbow Brigade in World War I. My mother came here from Cuba because it is the greatest country on earth. She said, goodbye, Fidel Castro. I don't care about any of this. I want to go to America. She got on the flight, on the Johnson Freedom flights with her little bag in her hand, nothing. And she left and came to America because she loves this country. She loved this country. She passed away. I miss her every single day of my life, but she made me the way that I am. She taught me to love my nation. It's okay, folks. I know you're all out there. If you're looking at your kids, if you're talking to your children, tell them how much you love this country. Tell them how great this country is. Tell them there's no need to change it. This is an awesome nation. This is an awesome nation. And I want to talk to you a little bit about, before I wrap this up, I want to talk to you a little bit about MyPillow. I love Mike Lindell. He's great. He helps sponsor this show. He's a great man. If you don't have a MyPillow or know someone who doesn't, now is the time, because for a limited time, Mike is offering his premium MyPillows. Yes, the one that started it all, for his lowest price ever. You can get a standard queen premium MyPillow for $29.98. Originally $69.98. That's a savings of over $40. Think about Christmas, guys. It's around the corner. It's good to get things early. Kings are only $5 more. Folks, now is the time to buy. Not only are you getting the lowest price ever, $29.98 for the standard queen premium, but Mike, a good friend of mine, is extending his 60-day money-back guarantee to March 1st, 2021. So go to mypillow.com. Put in the special code Carter, that's CARTER. I almost spelled my name wrong. Put in the special code Carter, CARTER. And don't forget, MyPillow makes a great gift for anyone at Christmas. Also, thank you so much for being here. I know that it's been a tough year, tough week for all of us. We're going to get through this. We are Americans. We are proud people. And I know all of you out there, you're like me, sitting at home trying to make sense of it all. I hope here at the Sara Carter Show, I hope I did that for you. Thank you so much for being a part of the show. God bless you. Remember, you can follow me at Sara Carter DC on Twitter. You can follow me on Parler at Sara Carter Official, SaraACarter.com. And please give us a 5-star rating on your podcast. If you've enjoyed today's episode, give us a review. Let us know how you feel, whether that's on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcast. And remember, here at the Sara Carter Show, we are taking the story back, folks.